Sleepytime Tales with Michael Dreher.
It had been a distinguished career, if not a brilliant one. Martin Highbottom made an impact on people's lives for 40 years as the trusted voice of the news on Radio Linfield. I mean, of course, he once hoped to make the jump into television. He had talks with Channel 5 when they first launched, and in 2004 he auditioned to be an overnight bingo caller on UK Gold, but he just couldn't make that leap. Perhaps he just had a face for radio. Now don't get me wrong, Martin Highbottom didn't regret spending his career with Radio Linfield. He was terribly proud of the niche he'd made for himself. He'd been able to live comfortably and provide for his family, seen his kids have kids of their own. His velvet smooth voice had won him awards, but, more importantly, it will be remembered across Linfield long after he is gone. He earned a place in people's homes and their memories. It was Martin who told Linfield that the Berlin Wall had fallen. When some people think of the death of Princess Diana, or 9/11, or COVID, or Jimmy Savile, or MH370, or Fukushima, they will think of Martin's baritone voice, thick with the gravitas the occasion required. Our story takes place as Martin Highbottom makes his final news report for Radio Linfield. He was in the familiarity of his recording booth with the series producer, his friend Tim. Once this report was done, Martin would officially be retired. He was eager to spend time with his many grandchildren and to see the world with his majestic wife Carol, who he adored. At the same time, Martin knew he would grieve for his time as the voice of Radio Linfield. He'd miss his colleagues, especially Nico Verlaine, the voice of Dawn, and Jenny Cartwright. So he imparted this final bulletin with complete dedication and focus. The news itself was terribly dull, mainly just about rich people being awful again, but to the listener at home or in the car, it sounded like the most important thing in the world. Such was Martin Highbottom's power over his audience. Meanwhile, in the corridor outside Martin's recording studio, a huddle of people tried not to giggle. Jenny Cartwright held a huge cake with Martin's face printed onto the icing. Sandra from accounting had a big bunch of balloons bearing his image. They'd even hired a stripper. Martin's friends and colleagues from over the years were all there to surprise him. The voice of Dawn, ready to present the faithful newsreader with a basket of fruits. Alcoholic Messiah, clutching a Jeroboam of tequila. Some of the hosts from the 1990s who weren't Utreed were there to celebrate Martin's retirement. The corridor was thick with hushed excitement. Martin concluded his broadcast and signed off with his customary, "Until we meet again, I've been Martin Highbottom." Usually, at this point, Tim would cut the broadcast and the mics would die. But Tim knew all about the huddle in the corridor. He was the one who had arranged this surprise for his friend's retirement. He left the mics live so that the listeners at home could join in with the surprise. And the door to the recording studio burst open, and the huddle spilled in, all weeping and hollering. Martin was so surprised he leapt to his feet, and a string of dreadful expletives rattled from his mouth. Suddenly his belly rumbled, loud as a crashing Boeing. The renowned Martin Highbottom, at the very end of his venerable career, suffered a catastrophic bowel explosion live on Radio Linfield. Torrents of liquid feces squirted from his anus with such terrible force, they shot through his trousers into jets of wet shit which splashed across all of Martin's well-wishers and the poor stripper. And still, the onslaught continued. The back of Martin's salmon-colored shirt was thick with bum sludge. He spun wildly, still frightened by the surprise party, and in doing so, became a devastating poo cannon. Poor Thin Tim, the producer, looked like an emaciated Augustus Gloop. Martin sank to his knees, which splashed as they landed, in a puddle of his own doings. He grunted and howled in pain as the arse deluge subsided, and his ringpiece reasserted itself as the gatekeeper to his poop chute. The poor man sobbed distraught. Jenny Cartwright, wordlessly, wiped clots of crap off the cake and presented it to the broken man. As Martin Highbottom took the cake from her, Thin Tim realized his mistake and cut the mics. But it was too late. 12,000 residents of Linfield heard the original radio broadcast, amongst their number, all the Highbottom children and grandchildren, Carol Highbottom, the Mayoress Vagina Plume, and former local MP Sir Kieran Stonks. Since then, the moment has been streamed online many billions of times. And such is the legacy of Martin Highbottom. The poor old man, whose anal disaster was heard around the world.